Hello there. My name is Prasenjit Bhattacharya. I am the co-founder at Great Manager Institute. And with me today, we have a very special guest. Kavinder Singh is the executive director and joint managing director at Pidilite Industries. Kavinder, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Prasenjit.
Now, Kavinder may not need an introduction for many of you, but for those of you who are not familiar with him, he has more than 3 decades of experience in FMCG, hospitality, consumer facing sectors, and has done leadership roles at ITC, uh, Mahindra and Mahindra Resorts, and apart from Pidilite, he started his career at Asian Paints and has spent significant stints in all of these organizations. He is known for his customer centric leadership, for bringing about innovation, and is an expert in managing change. Loves reading, is a fitness enthusiast, and enjoys traveling and exploring new places. So, Kavinder, it's a long story and it is a very interesting story. Therefore, without spending too much time, I'm going to jump right in. But before we talk about your corporate stint and your take on leadership, help us to know you as a person. Tell us about your early life and early influences and what shaped you during that time.
Thank you, Prasenjit, for having me here. It's a honor to be sitting with you. You're like my friend, and we have interacted on many occasions when we started our journey on Great Place to Work, if you recall. Coming back to myself, I think if I look back in time, and you know, uh, you will be surprised, even you would be surprised that I was born in a very, I would say, middle class family. My father was in Indian Air Force, and what it did to me in my early years is I saw discipline, I saw, dedication for the nation through my father and my mother, who has been a very significant inspirational figure in my life. She passed away last year, of course, unfortunately. But she always inspired me to think big. She used to tell me, you can do almost anything. I would not believe myself. And most importantly, growing up in a lower middle class home, uh, not with not much money on hand, definitely created a sense of, let's say, valuing everything that we have, and also more important, humility. One fascinating aspect of my growing up is that even though we were not financially well off, because in a government service, this is what my father, of course, came during the partition to India from erstwhile Pakistan, and his my grandfather was a station master, so not much, let's say, inheritance at his level and even at my level. But what I inherited from them was a sense of optimism, um, a belief that if one studies well, if one does whatever is tasked to do, one would reach greater heights. This is the only belief with which I sort of have been brought up with. I never felt any scarcity. I have never felt any scarcity, despite the fact that you would know a typical Indian Air Force officer would have how much in his bank account. And to me, I keep telling this to my children. Of course, I'm very fortunate that I have a very supporting partner. One side, my mother and my father instilled the values. And the moment I came out of the college, in 3 years' time, I married my wife. She is an amazing mix of right and left brain. She's very strong in the logical side because she's a science STEM graduate, and also she's quite a creative person. So I've never seen a person who has a blend of both the things. And she's again rock solid behind me, and she's the one who has always asked me, Why can't you be aiming for this? In fact, whenever I have had self doubt, I ask her and she says, why not? So the reason I'm bringing these two specific influences, one specifically my mother and my father and my wife, because I also believe that when you have people who believe in you, that helps to build a very strong foundation.
It's very, very interesting. In fact, that's something we share in common. Very, very middle class background, which didn't give us, thankfully, a sense of entitlement. And somebody else was narrating about a similar kind of background and said that we have, or I have, a middle class mindset, but I was instilled with world class aspiration. And in a sense, success seems to be ambition minus resources, because that's how you figure out how to be successful. And we had the benefit of having parents like that, and the fact that you had to really fight your way and get what you want. So you are an engineer by profession. You had your basic sort of engineering experience at Asian Paints, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, subsequently you have been to Wharton, you have been to Asian Institute of Management. But tell us a little bit about your career experiences. Asian Paints, ITC, then Pidilite, Mahindra. How did those experiences, and particularly one or two stories, that shaped your thinking as a leader?
You know, the one of the foundational blocks is that when you live in Air Force campuses, it's a very fascinating piece, and it'll build on to the story that I want to tell. Is that you see people from all parts of the country in Air Force campuses. That ensures that you think yourself as an Indian. You don't think that I belong to a particular state. And to me, that comes very naturally because my father would get transferred every 2 to 2.5 or 3 years. And he would come home and say, we are moving. And I would say, come on, I'll have to make new friends. And my mother will come and say, so let it be. It is how it's going to be. And adaptability to change and dealing with multicultural society that we are in is a foundational block. And when I went to engineering in Warangal, which is now called NIT Warangal, again I found people from all states. So for me, coming down south at that time from north, uh, even though we had lived in Bangalore for a while, was not that easy. But one thing that I had sort of accepted in my mind that I will be always pushed out of my comfort zone, and that will be fundamental to my growth, is something that it had become, let's say, a part of my life. Now, let me tell you the first stint of my career when I joined Asian Paint straight out of campus. I started in a factory, by the way. And you'll be amazed that, I started in the shop floor. And one day, and this is very fascinating, I still tell the gentleman who gave me this advice. And fortunately, he's still a mentor for me. And so I was sitting in the shop floor, and I'd finished my rounds, and I probably started a cup of tea for myself. And this gentleman walks in, and he says, "Come, let's have a chat." And this was early in the morning, around 8 a.m. And I'd started my shift around 7 a.m. I was a shift engineer, and he asks me, "What do you want to be?" And that's a very strange question to be asked to a person who is on the shop floor by the number one of the factory. And I told him that, look, at that time, we used to get a princely sum of few thousand rupees as a salary. And I gave him a figure which was double of the salary at that time, saying that I want to be 2x of what I'm getting today in next 1 year. So he says, "Is that your ambition?" I said, "Yes, that's my ambition." He says, "My view is that it would be better if you could spell what skills you want to acquire rather than say what money you want to make." That set my mind thinking. And I began to think as to why did I say that I need 2x of the money. Obviously, it came from my background, even though I never felt scarcity. But once I started earning, I started to think, why not? And that's the time I began to think that what are the skill sets that I need? And someone who started his career as an engineer on the shop floor uh, began to think, how can I run a factory? Now, you don't run a factory by just being a shift engineer. You've got to do different things too. So obviously, that set my mind thinking into creating impact. And I was one of the fastest promotees within Asian Paints because I started to think about how can I add skills, how can I add value. And of course, I did few things. I'm not getting into the detail, but I got promoted much faster. And that led, in a way, these were the stepping stones. So this story I'm able to share even today with my even children. When they say that we are getting this much salary and we want to, and this is my view that everybody thinks in terms of money. We need to think in terms of skills. What are the skills that I can add to myself? Because money will come once you have added those skills, or are you adding?
Then, as you moved on and you took leadership roles yourself, tell us some of your experiences of leadership in the kind of organizations that you have worked.
So, my journey, as you briefed earlier, started in Asian Paints. It's a fascinating company to build foundation, foundation of continuous learning. And, it's a very small sort of piece of my journey. When I started, I was very passionate about doing engineering in the shop floor. So, seeing me, somehow the Asian Paints people felt that I could do a great job in running a manufacturing environment. And after 6 months, I come back and I say, look, I want to go back to engineering, which is in a way, if you look at in a factory, typically the engineers maintain machines or they bring in new technologies. So they were a little surprised because normally people who run manufacturing, they have a fast track career to build the factory managers. But I insisted because I was very passionate about the knowledge that I had gained in my college, and I wanted to try a few stuff, a few points from what I had learned. And the fascinating piece is that they sort of, in a way, agreed. And when I went over there, I was able to obviously make some changes. I did some fundamental changes in some design, which led to improved life of some machineries, etc. So I got obviously noticed. And once I got noticed, I got promoted and whatever. And once I got promoted, I became a leader in one of the new plants of Asian Paints, which was set up near now called Greater Noida, at that time Noida. And this was a very difficult plant to set it up. And I started working over there. I was a young engineer trying to build and recruit a new team. And that's where my first brush with leadership happened in terms of building your own team, setting up things in my own way. And I learned few things in that journey that while I had chosen to be in engineering, but my heart began to say that, look, I can handle larger responsibilities. I should be running manufacturing. So here is what I'm again asking for an about turn. And of course, the organization need at that time was to set up that plant, and I set up that plant. While I was setting up that plant, lots of experiences in terms of dealing with the freshly formed union, etc., began to happen. I started enjoying. I said, look, dealing with people, dealing with unions is something that I enjoy, and I must be running a larger manufacturing plant. And it so happened that IDC at that time was looking for a very large plant, people, and I somehow was approached by IDC, and those were the days. You're right. The opportunities were hard to come by, and I left Asian Paints, of course, including the mentor who had guided me. I had to say that I'm going to move on.
Tell us the Mahindra holiday story. And I remember in one of your interviews, you were talking about why the services business of Mahindra's now contributes significantly to their overall revenue, and why they decided to get into the Mahindra Holidays kind of business, the timeshare business, as opposed to having just hotels. Tell us this story and how did you? What's the the secret of success?
when I look back at my time in Mahindra's, which is the last decade, I just exited Mahindra's just about 4 months back. Uh, when I joined Club Mahindra was having some 35 odd resorts and about 160, 70,000 members, roughly, or maybe 150. And the mandate at that time was that we want to make this as a world-class timeshare company. And I also asked this question, why in timeshare? Why not traditional hospitality? So one thing that came out very clearly is that Mahindras have chosen to be in timeshare because first of all, uh, hospitality has its own unique problems. So fundamentally, hospitality faces two problems. Number one, how to ensure high levels of sustained occupancies. It's not easy to maintain higher occupancies on a sustained basis. So that's why uh, the hospitality industry is seen as very cyclical. And there is a second challenge that they have is that uh, they most of the hospitality companies are in debt because they need to borrow to build. Of course, right now there is a new model that is now being it's now very popular that the developers develop hotels and the asset or the brand owners run the assets. Now, if you go to a typical hospitality business, the barriers to entry are obviously a brand, and to build the brand, you need to invest in your own properties, and then you have to build it up to a point, and after that, of course, you can start managing others' properties. So Mahindras took a call very early on. In fact, they got into traditional hospitality and then they got rid of one or two of those properties that were taken under the brand guest line. And the idea was that there is no really differentiation that you are able to do in hospitality. So one of the concepts that I learned in my journey with ITC when I was building Sunfeast biscuit business, and I realized that that's something that we used in Club Mahindra also, is that if you're in a business, what's your right to win? What is your true point of differentiation? So if you really look at Club Mahindra, in a business where you are taking money upfront for a membership that will go on for 25 years, you will not give your money to some company upfront for a membership that will go on for 25 years unless you believe that this company is going to be around, which means you have trust in the brand Mahindra. So for me, that was an insight that the brand Mahindra stood for timeless trust. And therefore, the idea of Club Mahindra is a very powerful idea that we are going to be around and we are going to be serving you. And to me, that was a big insight. And I said, let's play upon this. We are a trusted brand. Let's constantly give a message that we are going to be around not only these 25 years, but even thereafter.
So, Kavinder, you shared stories about Mahindra Holidays and whether it is an ITC, whether it is in Club Mahindra, these are business transformations in a sense. Pidilite is going to be your second stint. So, what was the challenge that was left? And that of course you're coming back shows how much you are valued, by your previous employer Pidilite and your current employer right now. But what was the challenge that was left, and what brought you back to Pidilite?
So actually, it goes back to the main question in my mind: why did I leave Pidilite in the first place? Since I have come back, so I think in my mind I was very clear when I left Pidilite. I was looking to get an exposure to a service business, and for me, uh, Club Mahindra is a consumer business and a service business of one of a kind business. And to my mind, it helped me to develop myself and also my leadership skills in a fast paced service environment. And when I look back, you know, I realized that I had put in about 9.5, 10 years in Club Mahindra. And it so happened in one of the conversations that happened with the chairman of Pidilite, I started to understand as to
what the challenges Pidilite faces today. Pidilite has very successfully weathered almost all the challenges, whether it is building great brands that we love, and also the fact that it has got very strong market share in each of the categories that it operates in. But during those 10 years when I was away from Pidilite, and by the way, in my first 5.5 years, I was working with the chairman and building the transformational piece of Pidilite in terms of uh, building multiple strategies in various businesses as well as the way the organization should function. So one of the things that which I did when I was there in my first stint was something called pill globin. I mean, this is a new word you would have heard. Pill stands for Pidilite Industries Limited, and hemoglobin is something that runs in a human body. So I was working on this concept with the chairman on pill globin, and when I met the chairman after 9.5, 10 years, so he shared with me a book called The Spirit of Pidilite. And I said, so is this pill globin? He said, yes, but now we have a book. So to me, this is a very fascinating subject. And we got talking. So one thing that sort of excited me was that the cultural piece has evolved, but there's a lot still to be done as to how do we imbibe the ways of working uh, of Pidilite in a larger organizational setup that Pidilite has become. It's about 8,000 odd people. Now, I realize that we have multiple verticals in Pidilite and people work across geographies. So, how do you create that common thread which binds the people, or the common glue, if I were to use the Pidilite language, that binds people? Uh, the spirit of Pidilite, actually, in a way, in a nutshell, basically talks about the fact that Pidilite's business model is to create differentiated offerings. And you remember I talked about differentiated offerings like Sunfeast or even Club Mahindra. So Pidilite is actually a company which is an amazing company which has chosen to enter into businesses where it can differentiate. Okay. And as a result of which, Pidilite enjoys the love of its users. Now, I will define users as so users are, let's say, carpenters, plumbers, contractors, and even waterproofers. So Pidilite has this amazing ability to connect with the users. So in my previous stint, where when I was handling strategy and even when I was the CEO of one of the businesses, I had undertaken some amount of work in this area, and I realized that Pidilite continues to play to the strength of engaging very closely with the users, as I defined earlier. And when you engage with users, you get market insights. And I would, Prasenjit mentioned that if you read this book, The Founder's Mentality by Bain, authors who have worked in Bain, one thing which is very, very clear is that founders have this amazing ability to remain connected to the ground.
Frontline.
Frontline. So Pidilite has this amazing culture of remaining connected to frontline. And to me, that learning, by the way, I carried to even Club Mahindra. And that helped me to build a very, very good culture there, which I talked about. So I was fascinated by the fact that we are driving significant amount of user engagement. Parallelly, we are driving obviously our employees or our associates or our team's engagement. And being an organization which is very fair, transparent, ethical, that is what Pidilite is known for, and creating products that actually continue to dominate in the space that they are in. And then Pidilite has very smartly, over the last few years, has moved into the solution space. So if you look at this brand, Dr. Fixit, we are into the solutions of providing waterproofing and various other exterior needs. And these are very fascinating solutions because these solutions are not provided by many other players. So when I saw this repertoire of the brands, when I looked back, when I was starting to consider my decision to move into Pidilite, I started to think that look, the organization is at a very interesting phase. We are in a situation today where we can and we should and we will take this company into not only the product space but also in the solution space. So we have solutions, we will take more and more solutions out to the community of our users that we deal with. And to me, this started to look at the inflection point that Pidilite is in terms of building from a product to a solution space, the journey, the Pill Globin piece, which is very fascinating. As I was mentioning to you, that Pill Globin is about very deep connect with the users, and also more importantly, constantly learning as to what's happening on the ground and constantly crafting solutions and products for the day-to-day and everyday needs of the people who are using the products actually. So Bill Globin as a philosophy is very unique to Pidilite. Since Pidilite is in the business of creating products that are differentiated, it requires Pidilite to remain on guard all the time as to when any competitor comes in and begins to mimic their strategy. So they need to be constantly one step ahead. And that requires listening constantly to the ground, constantly finding areas of improvement internally, and constantly finding ways of handling any obstacles that come in the process of surmounting those gaps that are there, whether it is your process, whether it is your market servicing, whether it is your product performance. So it's a company which has created a model which is self-correcting. So every time we do something, we constantly look at as to what has gone right, what has not doing so well, how do we ensure that the gap is sort of surmounted through another initiative. So Pidilite is one unique company and one of a kind in the company in the world where we are not focused on outcomes. We are focused on the process. Outcomes matter. It's not that outcomes don't matter. But we believe if we have the right process, right initiatives, the outcomes will happen. So we don't believe in artificially stressing out ourselves or our teams towards outcomes. And to my mind, that's a very unique way of looking at the business because we are playing a long game. We are not playing a game which is for the quarter or for the year. We are saying that, look, we are in the business of providing solutions or products to our users. How can we keep listening and how can we keep improving? How can we keep listening? How can we keep improving? It requires intellectual humility. That's a part of Pill Globin also, by the way. It requires you to be able to take on the views of everyone around the table. And therefore, even the most senior person in Pidilite who's chairing the meeting will never take a decision unless all facts are on the table and people have sort of discussed it. And then, if there is a decision, then we do a bit of pilots, experimentation. At any given point of time, we are running multiple experimentations and pilots to keep ensuring that the improvement happens. So it's a very different way of working than companies who are very focused on budgets, outcomes, targets, market cap. No. Pidilite does not focus on these things. They are focused on what is essential to the business. What is it that will keep us long time in the game? Because we want to be in the game, we want to lead the game. We don't want to be driven by just some financial consideration of a quarterly number. So to my mind, the Pill Globin piece and the fact that we are moving into solution space already, we have moved in, and the fact that we have a fairly large organization and this position which I am in right now offers me to shape the Pidilite of the future with the people whom I have worked already was a turning point in my decision to say that, okay, I should look at a transformational journey again. And it again comes back to my foundation where I say that, look, I am a constant learner. I have the intellectual humility. That's a value match. And most importantly, I am adaptable. I can continuously adapt across industries. I've worked in paints, I've worked in cities, I've built a biscuit business, I've worked in hospitality. I am in adhesives and these kind of solutions, photoproofing, etc. So building industry. So I'm industry agnostic in my mind. And like my mother told me that you can do anything. And I go with that belief that I can learn anything. I can, and my wife, who's been a big support all through with me, again supported my decision, and she said, why not? Why should you not look at a new opportunity which allows you to challenge yourself again? And for me, I began to think, and that's what made me take the decision. And I think I was telling you earlier, or maybe I didn't, that it's 4 months in Pidilite, but it seems like that I've been here for long because I know the people, I know the culture, and I know what we need to do. So it's a very quick getting into the groove situation that I'm in right now.
So very interesting that you talk about two things which strike in my mind about the way you manage your business at Pidilite. One is the infinity game, which is that you are not here for one quarter's results or two quarters results. And the second one is continuous improvement. And the only thing you need to do is focus on doing the right things and keep improving. And the results are bound to come. And which is a very different way from how many professional managers play the game where they are obsessed with quarter-wise results. Now, tell me, if you were to put your entire leadership learning in a nutshell and talk about what are those qualities or values which are, according to you, very important for a leader. People talk about empathy and listening and compassion. People talk about conceptual abilities, execution skills, resilience, stakeholder management. I mean, there could be 20 different qualities, but if you were to highlight a few, what will be those?
So, in my experience, any leader I think, in any field of life, fundamentally, should form a point of view, which I call as goal or north. Where do we want to go? Because fundamentally, leaders are charged with the responsibility of steering the company's future or their department's future or their division's future. So, ability to look at multiple points of data which exists, whether it's the environment, whether it is the business model, whether it is the proposition. So, these are all multiple data points. You need to be able to put them together and say that, look, all of this now from here on should move in this direction. Now, that could be a departure from the current direction, which means you need to do much more work. Or if it is accelerating, then more of the same, which is also fine. But that's a view the leader must form. Once the leader is forming view, so it's not a 1 day formation of view. It's about gathering your facts, building a bit of your gut and intuition, which again it's not gut sitting in a room, but going and talking to the front line, meeting people, constantly talking about your hypothesis or the way things are or the way the things should be. Capturing all that, to my mind, is something that a leader must do. And the leader must painstakingly do all this to be able to form, let's say, a point of view saying that this is the way we should be moving. However, whatever is formed through collective sort of discussions where people have sat together, hearing people, and also a bit of intuition that you begin to build because you begin to see things and you begin to think, I think this is right. So you do get those answers, but not be dogmatic about any path. Be willing to change, be willing to adapt because the situation is not going to remain the same as you move forward. Situation will continuously change. So constant listening, constant adaptation, and keeping up to date in the areas that affect the leadership role that you are performing, you have to keep a very quick, sharp eye on what's happening around because things do change and sometimes they can change rapidly. So, getting caught when you have not thought through the change is something that can happen to people, but it won't happen to people if they are on the ball all the time.
And
Now,
then there is the matter of execution, isn't it?
yeah,
Being at it all the
yes,
time. Yeah?
yes. So once you have formed a view, then obviously you need to be very, very clear that people must be aligned. And once people, now how the process of alignment is constant discussions, building your hypothesis, discussing so that people begin to genuinely believe, rightfully so, that you are on the right track and they are happy to follow you, even though you have an authority to tell them this is the way we are going to go. But I don't think the authority should be used. What you should use is a bit of a common collective shared purpose. We are in it together. That kind of a mindset we must build. And then, obviously, rigorous execution and constant monitoring, which is very critical, which is the review, the execution, what's happening on the ground. And again altering as things move. Because if you're a listening leader, you will see things that are not working as per the original plan. So you need to alter the plans. Now, this whole process is a very high engagement process. In this process, one should not become a micromanager also. One should constantly know when to back off and empower people to do their thing, but being there for them when they come with their insights, because you cannot be everywhere. You know that you cannot be everywhere, but you need to be able to work with the insights that people bring based on their understanding of the situation at involved. So you build your own insights, you hear other insights, then co-create a collective shared purpose. And to my mind, if you build conviction and you have a team which begins to build the conviction, then there is nothing really that can come in the way, because execution is very, very important, but execution happens when people are aligned. I think by just saying execution doesn't happen. When people feel that we are on the right track, they tend to align better. Of course, there is a constant mid-course correction that we all need. So once they see leaders who are engaged, who are guiding them, who are listening to them, are willing to change, adapting, and intellectual humility, that I don't know everything. But one thing I know, that being a leader, I am charged with the responsibility of taking decisions, because at the end of the day, somebody has to take the decisions while you can have a collective view. So the decision making, that's the time the leader has to put his neck on line, because anything that goes wrong, then it's clearly on the leader. But if anything and everything that goes right, it's all about everybody celebrating it. That's how it should be. The leader has to put himself on the line if things go wrong. But if things have going right, then all of us did it. It cannot be I did it. Because then you're not able to get a band of people who are going to follow me.
In a sense, that's a good note to end the conversation. A leader takes accountability for any failures, and the leader shares uh, with the team the success that comes. Kavinder, this has been amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.